Now 250,000. Now, but to get 275. 5, but to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4. 325. 5, but to get 3 1/4. But to get 325. Now half. Now but to get 300. And good morning from Dallas, Texas, at Lincoln Center at the intersection of the Dallas North Tollway and LBJ Freeway. Welcome to the Mike McGavel Jones Show, and I am very honored and excited to have our Texas Agriculture Commissioner, Mr. Sid Miller. And good morning. Good morning to you, Sid.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Glad to have you with me. We've got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about, and you're a busy guy. We've been working on this for probably 2 or 3 months trying to get this worked out, maybe longer.
It's took a while, but we're here and we're ready to go.
We are. Well, we're thrilled that you're here. We have a little history, and I'll just mention it. We met several years ago. You were helping us with the Texas Auctioneers Association. We had some legislation down in Austin, and you were very helpful in helping the auctioneers, and of course, anytime you're helping the auctioneers, you're a friend of mine anyway, right there. And so we have a lot of folks in the auction industry from here. I can tell you, we've got people in Ireland that'll be watching this. We got South Africa watching this, so we're covering a lot of territory. You have quite a distinguished background in multiple areas. I understand you were born in De Leon, Texas, just west of Fort Worth. And I'm going to let you tell me a little bit about your childhood and kind of how that all was.
Well, I'm an 8th generation farming rancher, and so we've been at this since 1700. If we have a couple of more good years, we may get the place paid for, hopefully. But I grew up on the Leon River, north of town in Comanche County, and we raised crops, peanuts. We had cattle. Raised American quarter horses, raised hogs. I learned to hunt and fish on Flat Creek. Matter of fact, that's where my older brother and dad took me down and taught me how to swim. Well, they took me down to the Blue Hole, Mike, and they just picked me up and threw me in the deep end. So learning to swim was the easy part. Getting out of the tow sack was the hard part.
That sounds like a John Wayne story. Oh, that's funny. So now, so your family's been in the business all these years. So when I say, what did your daddy do, it's not hard to figure out because you were born into it.
We were born into it. We came to actually in Virginia in 1700.
Wow.
And that's when we started.
That's impressive. And, so when did your family come to Texas?
After the Civil War, we moved to Texas, so we've been there for 4 generations.
Wow, farming
and ranching in Texas.
So you lived there as a kid, and then when you got out of high school, then did you have any brothers and sisters?
I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, so five of us. I'm the second child, and graduated Tarleton State University, and was an ag teacher actually.
Wow,
taught vocational agriculture, little town called Gustine, there in Comanche County.
Very small.
300 people.
Yep.
One flashing light.
Yeah, I'm surprised there was a light. I've done a lot of business down in that part of the country over the years between De Leon and Stephenville and every little town. I mean, there's not any road down there I don't think I've been on at one time or another. And I love that part of Texas, and there's a lot of people haven't discovered it yet. It's expanding so fast to the north, and it's already gone towards the east, and now they're getting down around Cedar Creek and everything south of here down to, say, Venus. I noticed I'm getting a lot of information out of Granbury and Stephenville and Brownwood, but anyway, that whole area is growing, and people are trying to get away from the city.
They are, and it's still, it's an hour and 15 minutes to Fort Worth. From my farm and ranch now is in Stephenville, so we've been there since 1985.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So how many acres do you have down there?
I farm about 1,200 acres there in and around town. Some of it's owned, some of it's leased property.
So how much time do you spend in Austin, actually?
Well,
on the road?
There's no normal, okay? Everybody asks me that. There's no normal, so... I might be in my Austin office 3 days 1 week, and I may not be there for 2 weeks, and all next week I'll be in Washington, D.C., and, this week I was in El Paso, and I've been in Dallas today, and I was in Abilene yesterday, and be in Austin in the morning, and in San Antonio Saturday, and then on a flight to D.C. Sunday, so... It's just
You sound like an auctioneer.
yeah. It's just there's no normal pattern.
Yeah.
You know, we actually have a second home. I had to buy another home in Travis County, out in the cornfield, not downtown.
Right.
So we're out east of town in the Blackland Prairie out there where they farm a lot of cotton and
I know
corn.
that area real well.
Yeah.
What's it closest
Little
to?
town called Copeland.
Copeland,
They have a
Texas.
dance hall there, and that's about it.
That's all there is.
So we're between Taylor and Manor and Elgin.
Well, and you know, I've had sales in every one of those little towns.
Oh,
But,
yeah?
You know, back in the 80s, you know, I traveled a lot to do sales, selling stores and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about Western Auto stores, and you know the folks that had the Western Auto store in De Leon.
Oh, yes.
The Vaughns, and we've got mutual friends, and it's really funny. You know, they came up with 6 degrees of separation a while back. You know, they said, you know, there's 6 degrees. Well, there's not 6 degrees. I'm finding it's 1 and 2 because I can talk to you for 15 minutes. We can come up with several people we know.
Oh, absolutely.
It's pretty wild.
Absolutely.
So you finish high school and you go off to college. And I was reading about Associate of Arts degree at Cisco,
Right.
the booming metropolis of Cisco, and Tarleton. And then when did you get married?
You know, my wife and I got married when we were juniors in college. Mm-hmm. So Deborah met my high school sweetheart at the area FFA banquet when we were in high school. So we dated and then been married 41 years. Be 42 in June.
Well, congratulations. Yeah. In fact, FFA was on my list of things to talk about, and since you were a vocational education instructor with the ag department, you probably spent a lot of time dealing with FFA and 4-H and all that.
Well, you know, I was a FFA advisor, obviously, and a 4-H leader, and you know, I travel all over this state, just like you do. And I like to tell everybody, everywhere I go, the greatest natural resource we have in Texas is our youth. It's those kids in those blue jackets and those green jackets.
Yep.
They're our future. They're our future leaders.
Yep.
And FFA is where leadership is actually taught in our high school. The only place it's taught.
Yeah.
So I have great respect for those. So we make pathways for those young people in agriculture any way we can. We make it as easy as possible for them to, if they want a career in agriculture, we try to make that happen.
Well, you know, before the interview, we were talking about Fort Worth and the stock show, and that goes back to, for me, when I was 22 years old, I was covering the FFA at the Fort Worth Stock Show for Gainesville, Cook County FFA, and in fact, the FFA, ironically, I won the broadcast award that year for my coverage from being with the FFA, and then here we are, you know, 40 years later, and off and on for about 5 to 10 years, I did the alumni auction at the national convention for FFA.
Oh wow!
So they have a big alumni deal, and we've had a booth at the national. I'm a huge fan of FFA. I just think when you meet those kids, they're the salt of the earth. They just like you said, they are the natural resource, and when you watch those kids talk and give speeches and they talk about leadership and community and business, and they soak it in.
One of the neat things that I've done that's kind of unique, I've been sworn in twice now as the Texas Agriculture Commissioner. The first time and the last time, I had the state FFA officers come and open the swearing-in ceremony like they do a chapter conducting team. Nice. and close it up. Every officer at his station, here by the plow, here by the owl, why by the owl, all of that.
Yep.
And actually had grown men come up to me crying, saying what fond memories that brought back of their childhood and how FFA shaped their lives. So it was a great event.
It's a well, and it's a bonding piece. You know, of course, you and I were talking. I ran my own company here in Dallas for 27 years before I joined United Country Real Estate. Well, United Country is a huge supporter of FFA, and you know, when they came to me and said, "Hey, start an auction division," you know, I'd had 2 or 3 people say they want to do that with some of the national real estate companies, and I go, well, and I looked at these companies. I'm going, now what is Keller? And then I'm not knocking any other real estate company. I'm just saying, let's say XYZ could be Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, anybody. It doesn't matter. Any national franchise. And I'm going, where's the rural connection? How's that going to work? And the only franchise company that I could come up with that had a natural auction platform was United Country, because it was built on rural America.
There you go.
And so I'm sitting there going, why would I, after 27 years of running my own company, why would I go jump on the train with somebody? And I'm sitting there going, well, they have FFA, they sell their cattle at auction, they sell their equipment at auction, they buy and sell their equipment. A lot of them have bought their farms and ranches at auction.
That's true.
This is where I need to go, and that's why I joined United Country, was because of that connection. And I see it all the time with these kids too. You know, all with these different FFA chapters and 4-H too. And I've gone to a lot of their chapters and done a little auction school deal with them, where we do tongue twisters and get them to have some fun. Tell me how you got into the politics thing. How did this happen?
Well, it was never part of my plan. I'll tell you that for sure. I mean, I had a long-range plan. I had a business wasn't paid for, you know, and several businesses going on, and I was actually recruited. The vice chairman of the state party, a man named David Barton, came up to me and poked me in the chest one day and said, "You're Sid Miller." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "We want you to run for the House of Representatives." Going to knock me over with a feather. So anything, we went home, talked to my family about it, we prayed about it, and felt that something the Lord was leading me to do. So you don't argue with him. So I was all in, and I ran against an incumbent Democrat in a Democrat district. Had no chance of winning. But my wife and I knocked on 12,000 doors, and we actually won and defeated the incumbent.
You wanted to win.
Oh yeah,
You were all in.
I was all in.
If you're in, you're in.
That's just my makeup.
What kind of businesses besides the ag business were you involved in before you got into running for the House?
Well, it's kind of unusual because I'd been in lots of them. I'd raised registered hog operations, sheep, goats, cattle, farmed peanuts. You know, I'd farm watermelons and pecans and cantaloupes and just about every milo and sorghum. And done all of that. My main business was I had a 120-acre tree farm and nursery. Had a couple of retail garden centers. Had a couple of gift stores.
Really?
You know,
Were they down there?
In Stephenville and Brownwood? Yeah. So had a nut company where we sold, you know, gift items, pecans, and peanuts.
So you were growing all that around there?
Yeah.
Because I know San Sab's always been real big on pecans.
Yeah, they were. You know, we got a lot of our supplies from down around San Saba. Sure did. Yeah.
So, and as you know, and we talked about this, and people that watch this show, they know that I do a little research on everybody.
Yeah.
I like to know everything I can, and also knowing that some of it may not even be true. I mean, you know, we've heard of fake news.
I have. I certainly have.
But anyway, so you defeat the Democratic lawmaker that had been in there, and you weren't supposed to win, but you did. Was it tight or was it close? I mean, what was the margin?
I think I won that first election like 54-46, so it wasn't really that close. Wasn't that close. Yep. Of course, he came back and ran against me, and the Democrats came after me for the next 4 or 5 elections. And finally, that district down there, like many country districts, switched to Republican. And so finally the Democrats gave up.
Have you always been a Republican?
I have, yes, sir. Always.
Yep. When you get into the House, what was there any culture shock when you got there, or had you been there enough where you already knew pretty much what was going on?
Well, you know, the funny thing about the makeup of the legislature down there, about half the people are lawyers and the other half are rich, and I wasn't either one. You know? I was just a country hayseed, you know. Yeah. And but I got in there and mixed it up with them. I did okay.
Yeah, well, I can understand that.
Yeah.
You've got a gift. So when you got there, and I was looking at some of the bills that you supported and introduced and things of that nature. So when you first got in, kind of what was your focus when you came in? So rather than me try to read a bunch of stuff to you about what you did, why don't you just tell me kind of what your focus and your interests were when you got there?
Agriculture issues. I ended up chairing the Agriculture and Livestock Committee. Also, later I chaired the Homeland Security and Public Safety, where I had oversight over the DPS and Texas Rangers, securing the Texas border and things like that. I guess the two things that I was really known for is the pro-life leader in the House. That was my issue, and I was.
This was in 2011,
right? And I was also the agriculture guy. Anything agriculture, you know, that's kind of what I was known for. So, two main pieces of legislation. On the pro-life, the best bill I ever passed was called the sonogram bill, which saves about 15 to 20,000 babies in Texas alone each year. 15 to 20,000. So, most proud of that. And then on the agriculture end, I waged war on feral hogs. I mean, they create $500 million each year damage to our state.
Right.
So I passed a bill to allow Texans to hunt wild hogs out of helicopters.
I was going to bring that up. I was going to bring that up.
I was kind of known as the guy that saved the babies and killed the hogs. That was.
Well, of course, those of us in the auction profession, we know a guy named Craig Meyer, and Craig is an auctioneer from down around Ennis. And I think he's probably ranching 800 to 1,000 acres down there. Well, he got all interested in doing the helicopter hunting.
Oh, wow!
And so that it even had a TV show. He got into that.
Oh, I remember that. Yes, I remember that.
Well, Craig came to my auction school in 1998, and he was 18 years old, and he was from Stephenville. He lived down in Stephenville, and he was something else. I mean, he was a handful, and so. Anyway, we kind of took him under our wing and then got him through the auction school. He had a little chant. His daddy was kind of working with him to become an auctioneer, and he came into the school and he said, "You're going to be proud of my boy." And I said, "Well, okay, let's hear it." And he did it, and I said, "Well, that ain't going to work."
Oh no, got to change that.
Craig will appreciate this story. He tells it all the time, and so he was 18 at the time and. Came out and immediately went to he helped me with auctions. I put him on the microphone, and that really made him set up sales. That's how you really get started in auction business, is setting up sales. And then I was in the room in Norfolk, Virginia at a national convention the night that he met his wife, Angie. She's an auctioneer.
Oh, wow.
They're both state champion auctioneers here in Texas. He is past president of the Texas Auctioneer Association. He's a world champion auto auctioneer. And then they won the team championship. And ironically, I was in Denver, Colorado, doing a St. Jude auction, and went out to the championship, and there they win the thing. So it seems like everything that's happened in their lives, I've kind of been there.
You've been part of it.
Yeah, in some way or another. And now they both teach at our auction school.
Oh, wow.
And so they're like family. They're like family. But anyway, he got into this helihunter thing, and I remember when he was taking his helicopter, he was doing all the practicing and the testing and trying to get qualified and certified to be a helicopter. And he calls me captain, and he said, "Captain," he said, "you ready to go up in the helicopter?" And I said, no. So I have not flown with him. No, I'm a watcher.
Yeah.
But he's had everybody from Ted Nugent. He had Ted Nugent up hunting with him, and so I'm telling you that it's a pretty impressive thing. And when you think about, and you can quote the numbers here, they do how much feral hogs do how much damage to the.
It's over 500 million.
500
just in
million
our state, just our state alone.
So
each year.
How are we doing with the battle?
Well, we still need more tools. We have to maintain. We have to eliminate 60% of them just to maintain the current population.
How are we doing?
Population. So they're getting worse. They're getting worse. We need some more tools. We need some selective baits, which we're almost there on that. We just need more tools. We can just trap and shoot so many of them.
So when you shoot them, or whatever you do to eradicate them, what happens to the meat? Do they?
Well, a lot of the times, like our friend Ted Nugent, who's actually my campaign chairman and campaign treasurer,
right?
Set up a program. I forget the name of it. Hunters for the Homeless or something like that.
I got it. And I think, in fact, I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, so
Craig is involved in that.
And he knows about it.
And so they
take them, process them, and donate them to homeless shelters.
Yep, that's right.
Where they go. And it's great.
That's a great program.
Organic, completely organic, fresh, wild caught, wild boar meat. It's good. So that's where a lot of it goes. Some of them, they remain on the ranch, and the buzzards and everything, consume them. And actually, the other hogs eat the hogs.
I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, I lived on a dairy about an hour north of here, outside of Gainesville, And, when you tell somebody that you lived on a farm back in the 60s, and you tell them what all you used to shoot and what all you used to eat, a lot of times they'll go, "Oh my God, y'all ate those?" I go, "Well, yeah,
Sure, why not?
It was on the
Squirrel pie, right?
a lot of squirrels, squirrels and rabbits, and oh my." And of course, we woke up every morning and listening to Paul Harvey News. If you didn't listen to Paul Harvey News, you didn't live on a farm or a ranch anywhere in Texas. So all right, so we go through. This is really funny. I was going to ask you one of the questions I had. Sum up what the Texas Agriculture Commissioner does besides have your name on every gas pump in Texas.
Whoa, we may have to have another show for that. We do a lot of stuff, but no one really knows what we do.
Well, that's what I really want to get to, because people need to understand what the Ag Commissioner does.
We have over 130 statutory functions by law that my agencies perform. My agency is a $6 billion agency, which doesn't really ring home to anybody. But if I told you that my budget is larger than the budget of 31 governors, that kind of drives it home.
Yep.
So we're a large agency.
Well, we are a country.
Yeah. So people may not know it, but I'm responsible for 5 million school meals each day. We run all the nutritional programs for the state and federal government here in Texas. School lunch, school breakfast. We help with Meals on Wheels, summer feeding programs, evening programs, adult feeding programs. We work with area food banks, et cetera. A lot of grants and distribution through that. We run the commodity warehouses. So like when Hurricane Harvey hits, I'm responsible for getting all the food to the emergency shelters and things like that. So most people don't know that. We are also the Consumer Protection Division for the state of Texas. We make sure that consumers aren't getting ripped off. You had mentioned fuel pumps. So we do weights and measures is that division. So anything sold by weight, length, height, volume, we oversee that. Cardwood, gas pumps, scales.
When I was a kid, probably around 18, 19 years old, my grandfather, he had built refineries during World War II. And then they started they had an oil company north of here called Burke Royalty, and and he was just kind of a part of it. He's probably an employee or something. But then as time went on, he got into installing service stations.
Oh, okay.
And the fuel pumps. And so I literally had a license with weights and measures.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
Because we would install all the piping, and then we'd test all the pumps, and then we'd repair the pumps. Right. And when I was 19, 20 years old, I was repairing gasoline nozzles.
Wow.
And we'd have to test those things. And I would go down to Austin. We'd drop off our cans, and they would test them out and make sure that they were metered out. Then I remember running all over the country with these cans, these gas cans. A lot of people don't even know what I'm talking about.
But you had to get certified from the Department of Agriculture.
I had to have a license. And at 18, 19, I was certified by Texas Buy. I don't remember who. Well, I have no idea now who the Ag Commissioner was at that time. But
probably John C. White would be my guess.
That sounds about right.
He was there like 26 years.
Yeah.
A long time.
It's just really interesting because your work crosses over so many boundaries. People, I was thinking about it. You're like, I guess if you look at the order, the structure of the governor, the lieutenant governor, the Secretary of State. When you go down, you're like the number 4 or 5 most important elected official in the state of Texas. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I think that's a story that should be told. People need to understand. I was reading some information about you, and you had pushed to give the local school districts the right to do their own food agenda.
That's right.
That's the best way I can put it. When you say that?
Yeah. When I took over a little over 4 years ago, instead of having healthy kids, we had healthy trash cans because all the food was being thrown away. It was terrible.
Yeah.
So we've worked real hard on that. And I have a farm to school program, Farm Fresh Fridays, where we bring in the farmer and let them talk about where their food's grown. And I set up a network, Mike. Our schools were buying 0 local products from our local farmers.
Yeah.
And so we set up a network. We've got them all connected. And last year, our schools bought $10 million worth of local fresh product. No added salt, no preservatives, no dyes, never flash frozen, served fresh to our kiddos. So we have about half our schools participating. It's not mandatory. I don't believe in mandates. So we have over half our schools participating in that program now, and we're starting to see less and less of that food going in the trash, and those kids are eating it.
That's good. That's real good, real good. Well, it's really funny when you start talking about regulations, and a lot of people don't realize that for over 20 years, almost 25 years, I sold all the surplus for the Dallas Independent School District. Wow. And I had that contract and finally gave it to my partner, and then he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. But when you're inside of a system, you certainly do get an eyeful of what's waste and what's not, and what's right and what's not right. And
that's taxpayer dollars going in the trash.
Well, I'm looking at my dollars.
Yeah.
And it's all about tax dollars.
Right.
And but then when you look at the crossover too, though, with the Homeland Security, and we're going to talk about the border. That's a pretty passionate thing that I'd like to talk about today. So you served your first term, then you decided you wanted to do it again.
Actually served 6 terms.
In
the Texas House. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
in the House.
In the House.
And then
then we ran for Agriculture Commissioner, successful on that.
Right.
Crowded field, but we prevailed. I got in late, and there was already 4 or 5 of them running. But when I announced that Ted Nugent was my campaign treasurer, I went shot right to the top, and never left that spot.
Cat scratch fever right there.
Yeah.
He is something else. I was in the Minneapolis airport years ago, and you can't miss him.
Oh no!
I mean, it's like I think that was Ted Nugent, and then it was like, well, of course that was Ted Nugent.
Absolutely.
Well, you got name identity.
He's a great rancher. Has a ranch here in Texas. He considers himself a Texan. He still has property in Michigan, but has a really nice place in Valley Mills.
Really,
just outside of Waco. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that's pretty cool. So so your first term was up as ag commissioner.
Just recently got reelected,
Yep.
along with all the other statewide. Abbott and the rest of us all ran.
How hard did you have to work this time?
I just go wide open. I don't know any other way to go. So we campaign real hard. Most of my campaign is social media based and shoe leather and where the rubber meets the road.
Yep.
Somewhere every day, 4 or 5 places a day, just like I am today. We just, I go pretty hard.
Well, I mean, we literally are, we're doing this show today, and you and I've been trying. I've been working with your folks in Austin to make this work, and I was very excited to have you on. I really am. I appreciate the work that you do, because sometimes the word politician is a dirty word, and I go to Washington and I lobby for the auctioneers and the real estate profession, and it's an ongoing battle all the time. There's somebody trying to put you out of business all the time, and we live in a different world. The world you and I grew up in, because we're pretty close to the same age. It's just not the same anymore. And on that subject, I want to talk about credit card skimmers.
Okay.
Tell me about that.
Well, of course, you'd mentioned that, my name's on every fuel pump in the state, 400,000 of them.
Yep.
We have a kind of a new phenomenon, and it's identity theft. And these guys put a device in called a credit card skimmer inside the pump, or attach it to the outside of the pump, and they steal your credit card information. And then all of a sudden you get a notice that your card's compromised. Of course, it always happens on a Friday, when you can't get another until Tuesday of next week.
Of course.
But it's not just credit cards; it's also debit cards, which is a huge problem. So I've taken it on myself. There's no other state agency addressing that. So we're taking on. We have all of my technicians now are trained in credit card skimmer protection. So we go in and we're catching a lot of them. But we work with the local police departments, the sheriff's department, actually Secret Service. We're involved with them.
Yeah.
It's organized crime. It's for the most part Cuban mafia. There's a few Russian mafia involved.
Wow.
But it's mainly the Cuban nationals it's an organized crime ring is what it is.
Wow. I didn't know where it was originating. I know you've done a video about it. I don't know if you've done more than one, but I know that you've done some video.
On YouTube, there's a real good instructional video how to keep from getting your credit card skimmed. I would suggest if you haven't seen that, watch it, because
what do they type in?
Just a Sid Miller credit card skimmer. Okay. It'll come up. One of the best ways to check is with your phone. Yep. These skimmers are Bluetooth equipped, so you can just, before you fill up, go to settings on your phone, hit Bluetooth. If you see something really unusual, like a long string of numbers or letters, that's a credit card skimmer. Don't fill up at that pump. Call me, and I'll send somebody out, and we'll open the pump and see if we can find what's going on.
Yeah, and we will definitely have you give your information at the end of the show and how they can get a hold of your office and you know, how to talk about it. Ironically, I had just literally watched yesterday or night before last. It was a feature on skimming. In fact, a friend of mine, Wayne Thorne from Alabama, he's an auctioneer and a ringman that works with me, and we've known each other for 30, 40 years. And he sent me a video about this skimming, and it was showing some things you can do. I thought it was interesting. They were showing people that where you put your credit card in, you could actually kind of grab it and shake it or try to pull it off, and sometimes they'll just come right off because they stick them on there, and they know it may be short-lived, but you're not going to hurt the pump.
No.
Because those things, because I used to install them. Of course, back in the old days when we first started installing pumps, they were not digital. I was on the front end of the digital stuff.
All mechanical.
Oh my gosh, you talk about nightmares, like trying to repair a watch. And it was all, you know, the kids today don't even know what we're talking about. And when they first came out with the digital stuff, I'm going, holy guacamole, this is going to be a monster. Because I'm not a technical guy, and it was just like, oh, maybe we ought to just work harder on this auction thing. So that's how that worked out. Now I'm going to talk about some controversial stuff. And you and I, we text back and forth. We visit. Quite a bit through social media and messenger and stuff, and which I talked to a lot of people, you know, in Washington, some of the congressional members and the senators, and we were talking about the fact I'm going to be up there. You're going back and forth, covering us, and I go up there, and Senator Cornyn is an acquaintance, and Senator Cruz. I'm going to talk about a little bit of that. I'm going to talk about Mr. Beto. Here in a minute, but one of the subjects that you brought attention to, and I want to talk about this because it's happening here in Dallas. You know, we've been seeing the Confederate monuments being removed from Virginia to Texas. We saw Lee Park, Robert E. Lee Park here in Dallas. They took Robert E. Lee's statue down and put it in storage somewhere, and we're kind of suspended on what they're going to do or how they're going to rename it. They're going to do something. Yeah. They've already renamed most of the schools in Dallas that were of any ancestry to the Confederacy. I grew up in a town north of here in Gainesville, and what people don't understand is, you know, that's just our history. That is the history. Yeah. And I have a hard time with it because, you know, we still have our Confederate monuments on the courthouse square. I was raised in that town, and nothing about that statue ever made me want to become a Confederate. It's our legacy, it's our history. Every street around that courthouse is named after a Confederate soldier, or someone that was in the, and I just don't understand why we want to lose our history. It's not necessarily an affirmation of the thought. For me, it was never about slavery. It was about economics, and people don't understand. There were probably as many slave owners in the North as there was in the South. It's just when it became an economic issue, you know, the North needed the support of the economics of the South. That's what really brought the thing to really a boiling point. And we could debate it, but now they've announced in the last week and a half they're going to go into a cemetery, which, you know, my personal feeling is a cemetery is a sacred place, and now they're going to remove the Confederate statues, which it's a complex. I mean, it's a complex situation, and they're going to spend $500,000 to remove, and they don't know what they're going to do with them. They just know we're going to take them down because we're going to follow the edict of New Orleans and places like that. Now, they call that Pioneer Cemetery.
Right.
Well, there's a reason why they call it Pioneer Cemetery. We have the first mayors of Dallas are buried there. It's history. I know that you had supported license plate.
I do.
Yes.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Well, the Sons of Confederate Veterans wanted a specialty license plate several years ago, and they had the rebel flag, not the Confederate flag, but the rebel flag,
Right.
Which has some,
Similarities.
Racial overtones. That's been used by some skinheads and things.
Yeah.
So the TxDOT commissioners turned them down. They said, it's just too controversial. We're not giving you a license plate. Well, they came to me, and this was just more recently, but it's been several years since they tried, and they had a new plate design. They said, and you can get a plate if you get a state agency to sponsor you. So they had to have a sponsor. I said, well, let me see it. Let's see what you've got. And they simply had the Texas flag, and they had a soldier dressed in a gray uniform there holding the Texas. I said, I don't think that's going to offend anybody. I mean, if that offends somebody, you're trying to be offended, I guess, because, and it was, I said, sure, I'll sponsor it. Well, TxDOT turned them down again. They said it was too controversial. The Lone Star flag is considered a Confederate flag.
Yeah.
So, it is. That was the Texas Regiment flag, was the Lone Star flag. So, anyway, they got turned down. So, I don't know if they'll try again or not, but I get very perturbed about trying to change our history and taking these statues down and renaming streets and schools. The only way we're going to learn from history is have it before us.
That's right.
So, I wrote a long opinion piece. What really throwed me over the brink is when Six Flags Over Texas, right down the road here, decided to take the Six Flags that flew over Texas down and just have six flags, I guess.
It was just six.
Yeah,
it was just six U.S. flags.
It was the Six Flags that had flown over Texas.
Oh,
so Spain, Mexico.
I grew up. Yeah,
the Confederacy, the Lone Star State, United States flag, and France.
Right.
So that's the six. So anyway, that's where I kind of got involved and started, speaking my mind, and I immediately bought Six Flags that flew over Texas, and they're up in the Texas Department of Agriculture. If you want to come by and see them, I've got them on display.
Well,
in my office.
It just kind of blows my mind because we have a specific history in this state. And I just I have a hard time, and I've told people before, if I hadn't been in the auction business and done all the different things I've done, I originally thought I was going to end up being a basketball coach and a history teacher.
Oh, wow.
Because I loved history. And then when you just, we've seen the same thing done by ISIS. They've gone into all these places and they've torn down the buildings and the museums and they've burned the art and they've literally beat it with hammers and all that stuff. And we're seeing some of the same stuff in the United States, and I just think it's wrong. And I'm not defending anything about what happened during the Civil War. That's not it. No, it's just a shame to see us go to these levels. And some of it is relatively radicals that want to change the face of the country.
We can learn a lot from history. If we don't, we repeat history. That's
right.
Kind of the mantra.
That's my rant for the moment.
Okay.
You probably knew that was coming. So, Greg Abbott. Governor Abbott ran on a platform of less government, less regulation, which now I'm getting in full force on right now because previously when you helped us with legislation, it was to improve our regulations over auctioneering, and I believe that when you have a multi-billion-dollar industry like the auctioneers, look, if you passed away, now I'm not promoting anything, but if something happened to you next week and Deborah called me and said, Mike, would you come out and handle the estate or sell some stuff for us, you would want to know that she was protected financially, whether it's through bonding or just regulations where other people can keep an eye on what you do to make sure you do it right and do it in fairness to the family. It's a big deal. And right now someone has entered in a potential bill to do away with licensing for auctioneers. It's going to be controversial, and I'm going to be in Austin because that's what I do, and it's unnecessary. We passed a few years ago a bill that required, if you're going to be an online auctioneer, you're going to be regulated just like a non-online.
Sure.
Because auctioneers, if it's an auction, it's an auction. And that was my point in the legislation. If it's not an auction, then don't call it an auction. But if it's got the word auction in it, and you're going to use what I've created over the last 40 years of running a reputable auction company, then I think you ought to be regulated too. It's only fair. Well, we couldn't seem to get. We got the bill passed overwhelmingly. Went into immediate act, and like within 30 days or something, and nobody argued against it. Right. Texas Department of License Regulation didn't argue against it. Everybody was on the same page until 2 or 3 of the big auction companies decided to come in and say, we don't want to be regulated. And then it's amazing how you get a stalemate in Austin, and then the regulatory agency decides, you know what, we're not going to do anything about this. We're just not going to do it.
That's a shame. And that's what we do. We're part of the consumer protection, and the auction laws are to protect the consumer.
Right.
From getting ripped off by unscrupulous actors. Unfortunately, the other 98% has to comply with them to protect us from the 2 or 3% bad actors.
Sure.
And that's true any profession.
Sure.
And so that's why they're there, is to protect us from bad actors.
Got to be licensed to be a doctor.
Absolutely.
Got to be licensed to be an attorney. Real estate. And I tell you, real estate's a big part of our business. I mean, a huge part of our business. So anyway, I'm just kind of bringing that up. I appreciate.
We need to keep those consumer protections in place.
I agree.
I'm not a big government guy, and I'm not for over regulations, but we do need some regulations to protect the consumer,
so
they don't get ripped off.
Yeah, well, I agree with you 100%. And there's a reason why in the federal bankruptcy courts they require anywhere up to $500,000 to $1 million bond for an auctioneer to work for them. Yeah. And see, we don't have that protection, So anyway, that's something that you and I'll probably talk on a sidebar. So this is kind of a weird question for you, but so when Sid Miller's sitting in his office and he needs advice on an issue, who's his go-to person? Who's your mentor, or who's somebody you look up to for guidance? Because we all have somebody.
I'll tell you, it's pretty easy for me, and I learned this when I served in the legislature. I sat on the north side of the House chamber, and it's up on the second floor. And most of those decisions were black and white. I mean, I knew if I was for it or I was against it. But every once in a while, Mike, there's one of those gray ones. What I would do is I would go over and I would open the shutters. There's a windowsill there, and I'd sit. And there's a lot of monuments on our Capitol ground. But right outside that window, by my desk, was a monument of the 10 Commandments. And I would look at that monument. I'd say, where does this bill fit in that list of laws?
Wow.
And without fail, God would give me the guidance, what I needed to do. I mean, it would come real clear to me. Mm-hmm. And so, I look to the scripture for guidance when it comes to those gray areas where I just really don't have a black and white decision on it. So, and I pray about it. So that's where I get my guidance.
That's cool. That's a great answer too.
Thank you.
You should be commended for that. Who are kind of some of the people that you are, say, better friends with, that you kind of commune with when you're in Austin? People that you would consider friends. Who would we talk?
Well, we have a lot of those. Of course, a lot of former legislators, some that are still in office. Of course, my executive staff, I have full confidence in them. I have 4 assistant commissioners. I have a general counsel who I served with in the legislature. I have a deputy commissioner. So those are the people that I surround me. I tried to hire people that are smarter than me and tell me what I need to do. And that's why the agency we've revamped it, retooled it. It's running much more efficient. We're a lot better with our dollars. We've cut out regulation, roll back mandates, and but that's just the kind of people. And I pay my people really good. And I got criticized for the amount I pay my people. But the way you do that is you run it like a business. So when I took over, I said, how much are we paying total for our administrative staff? They said, well, it's this much. I said, how many people have we got? They said, we got 16. I said, I can't hire the kind of people that I want to hire for that kind of money. I said, but I've got to have really good people in here. I said, if I just hire 9, how much can I pay them? Oh, you can pay them really good if you just. I said, well, good. So I'm actually paying less for my administrative staff overall, but my administrators are making more money than the previous ones. Does that make sense?
Well, I read all about it.
So yeah,
I didn't go there.
Yeah,
but it was one
so
of the subjects.
I was able to go get some really, really good people.
Yeah, you were criticized
Yeah.
big time for seeking more funds and for wanting to raise fees and things of that nature.
Sure.
You got hammered about that, but you know what? Sometimes you just got to do what you
Just
have
gotta
to
bite
do to
the
make it
bullet
work.
and do what's right.
Well, we all do that,
Yeah.
you know. And we run a $7-8 billion company down the hallway from here.
Wow.
And we try to hire the best and the brightest, and I'd rather have 1 than 3. And
Absolutely.
because they'll make sure we get the work done.
Absolutely.
And give them a few assistants, and they can do a lot. So I think that's cool. So 2016 rolls around, and we have an interesting presidential candidate. And I actually have met Mr. Trump a few times, and know some of his. Are friends with some of his business associates out in New York and various states. And when he was running, I met him in Wisconsin, and I've had a few discussions. And so I would say you are have been a staunch supporter of President Trump. You've rallied with him. You've traveled with him. And tell me about this last visit that he had.
Well, you know, I was one of the few statewide, actually I was the only statewide that was supporting Trump back when he was running for the presidency. I mean, everybody else thought he had kryptonite in his pocket or something. I don't know what the problem was, but, you know, I'll just use a little cowboy logic, Mike. I thought, you know, Donald Trump on his worst day, and if you'll remember, he had some bad days back then.
Yeah.
It's still better than Hillary Clinton. So I'm all in. I'm doing whatever I can to get him elected. And, you know, I went on Fox News and all the things, and he appreciated that, you know, me standing up for him. Because they said the election was going to be close here in Texas, and I was telling them they were all wrong. You know, it wasn't going to be close.
Right.
So most recently, got a call from the White House, and they wanted me to come to El Paso to the rally and meet the president at the airport on Air Force One and ride with him to the event, which I did. And it was a good discussion we had in the Beast. They call it the Beast, the Cadillac, you know, that's the armored Cadillac.
Yeah.
It's quite a vehicle, by the way. That's another story.
It's like what is it, an Escalade or something?
No, it's a stretched
It's a stretch.
Cadillac.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Well, I've seen pictures of it.
yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yep.
The funniest thing that happened, I forgot to turn my phone off. I'm sitting closer than me and you're sitting, and my ringtone is the good, the bad, the ugly. You know, from the Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah.
It goes off, and he just slaps me on the legs and. The good, the bad, that's the best Western ever made. Clint Eastwood. Boy, he's not looking so good now. I saw him at Pebble Beach the other day. He's just, I said, Mr. President, Tombstone is by far the best Western ever made. He said, Tombstone? I said, yeah, you know, Val Kilmer, Doc Holliday, Johnny Ringo, Virgil White Earp, the OK Corral. That's the best one ever made. He goes, wow, Tombstone? Not the good, the bad, the ugly? I couldn't believe it. I was arguing with the president.
Well, see, if I'd have been sitting over there, I'd start talking about John Wayne.
There you go.
So there was some rumors of a possibility that you could join the cabinet at some point.
Well, actually, we came real close.
I thought you did.
I got a call and said, the president wants you to come down here and interview at Mar-a-Lago for a cabinet position for Secretary of Agriculture. Said, we've interviewed 4 people, but we want to interview you too. So I was the last one they interviewed. The other 4 they interviewed, their interviews lasted 15 minutes
Wow.
each. I was in there 2.5 hours. So I told Deborah, my wife, said, you know, I never really wanted to go to Washington, D.C., but it looks like the president's going to ask us to, you know, come help him. I mean, you don't tell the president no, so if he does, you know, we're going. And I'll just have to resign as the agriculture commissioner, I guess, take that cabinet position. So it looked like everything was a go, and then hit a little snag. They do a thing called a background check. And one of the guys come, he said, Commissioner Miller, I see here that is it true that your campaign treasurer and your campaign chairman is Ted Nugent? I said, yeah, man, we're like blood brothers. We're like close. Yeah, you bet. Yes, sir. He's my man. He said, Commissioner, that one item alone is enough to keep you from getting through the nomination process. I said, okay, I'm out.
And so Governor Perdue from Georgia.
And he's doing a great job. I know, Sonny, I'll see him this next week. He's perfect man for the job.
That's good.
He's doing
That's
a good
good
job.
Well, it's impressive to be in the final 2 or 3.
I was honored just to be on the short list, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna read this because I wrote this about 2 or 3 hours ago, and then I want to hear your take. And so people listening to this now, they need to understand. I'm pretty much a kind of an independent guy. I believe in who the person is, who's going to do the best job for me. I'm a very fiscal conservative, but I tend to be open-minded to letting people live their own life. I don't want to tell people how to live their life. I don't want to. But I have my beliefs, and every once in a while they'll sneak out.
There you go.
And I find it interesting, and this is a note that I wrote this morning. I find it interesting that so much is made of the drugs and the human trafficking on the border, because that seems to be the big discussion on the wall. They always, whether it's MSNBC or CNN or any of the liberal groups, it's always about the drugs. And don't get me wrong, I get it. We know that there's a certain amount that's going to come through. My challenge has been, because I do watch this and I do study it, and I read a lot about what's going on in other countries. We know that in South America right now, and in Central America, it's especially South is extremely unstable. Venezuela, etc. In my opinion, it's my foregone conclusion that as these governments disintegrate or disrupt or get violent, these refugees are going to continue to move north. That's the answer for them. There's nowhere south to go that's going to be better than what they have now. So as this goes down, of course, and President Trump and his administration are dealing with this right now. This is a hot topic on what to do with Venezuela.
Very much.
But as these people, we've already got people from other Central American countries coming north. We hear about these groups, and the president talks about it all the time. Well, the reality is, you have to have a barrier to stop these people, or they're just going to walk in. And can you fortify the border? Yes, you can fortify the border, and you can line up troops, and you can put the National Guard. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to have to take people in Iowa and post them at the border of the United States to keep people out and keep the people who own property along the border safe, because it's only going to get bad? It just doesn't make any sense. And I hear the argument all the time about, the numbers are down now than the most in history. Well, part of that's because we've scared them into staying where they are and said, don't come because we're going to send you back. But the other thing about this is you have to put a stop. It's funny. Everybody that doesn't want a border or a fence around the border of Texas or Arizona or California or New Mexico, they're the same people that have a fence around their house, from the Vatican on down. Everybody's got protection, but they don't want us to protect ourselves. And let me tell you, I don't care if the numbers are 20% of what they were 10 years ago. It only takes one to take down a high-rise.
That's true.
It only takes a small group of people to disrupt everything we have in this country. And I'll be interested to see how many of those people that are standing, screaming, and yelling about a border are going to be going, well, that's terrible, in Los Angeles when we have Century City go down.
Yeah.
Because it's going to happen, Sid, because you can't protect forever. There's always going to be a catastrophic thing happen. Oklahoma City happened. Right. Of course, that was in this country. But you're going to have natural things happen because of people.
Yeah.
So
crazy people.
Tell me your take.
Well, I had this very conversation with the president, and I started out. I said, Mr. President, I think you really need to take it to the Democrats, because what they're saying is your wall is immoral. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, let me tell you what's immoral. What's immoral is giving these people false hope. They're herded up here thousands of miles like cattle. They get here. The women and children are abused or raped. Their young men are recruited into MS-13 gangs. The rest of them are made into drug mules to carry dope smuggled across the river. I said, when things go bad, they're left to die in the desert. I said, I've seen them. I was chairman of Homeland Security. I've seen those bodies out there. I know what's happening to those people. I said, if you want to do a humanitarian act, one of the greatest humanitarian acts you can do is build that wall. The most, humane thing you can do is build the wall. The most morally correct thing is build that wall and funnel that immigration to legal ports of entries. I said, this is a humanitarian effort. It's just shame. It's a travesty what are happening to those people. And they pay tens of thousands of dollars for the privilege to be abused like that.
Yeah.
And then our farmers and ranchers on our side can't even go on their property. So you talk about the real estate values. There is none. You can't sell it for any price if it's got cartel traffic back and forth. Who wants that? Nobody. Yep. And I said, they can't farm. Their fences are cut. Their houses are ransacked. Their cattle are scattered or killed and are stolen. He said, I said, it's really bad. I said, we've got to secure the border.
Yeah.
He said, I like it. I'm going to use that. And he did that night in his speech.
Yeah. He's intuitive and he understands. I mean, look, he speaks to the people. Like he's the worst filter I've ever seen on any politician. But you know what? It's resonated with the people because the people are fed up with what's going on in Washington, and not just Washington. It's in the state houses too. The people, the average working man and woman who has paid in their taxes and are worried about their Social Security, they're fed up. That we're tired of hearing about investments in other countries. That's the nut right there. People like me are sick of hearing about rebuilding Afghanistan. I'm not worried about fixing Syria. I'm not concerned about those countries. I'm sorry that they've got problems, but we've spent billions and trillions of dollars working on countries, and then they turn right around and go right back to the same thing that it was before. So I'm just like everybody else. I'm a frustrated American that says enough's enough. Now, if somebody comes along that's better than Donald Trump and gets it like he has, I'm going to support somebody like that because that's the way it is. So what do you think about Beto?
Well, I kind of think and I hope that he's kind of a flash in the pan. He had a great organization together. He energized. There was more than twice as many Democrats turned out for this last election than they did 4 years ago.
Yep.
So he energized the base. They registered a lot of new voters, a lot of millennials he reached out to. Willie Nelson had a concert for him there in Austin.
Yep.
They registered 40,000 new voters just at that concert.
Wow.
So that's kind of the new phenomenon. I think that's the new Democrat. They're socialist. You got others like him. I predict 2020 the Democrats are going to nominate some left winger, Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, and that's just not going to play well here in Texas.
Yeah.
I think Trump will win by a much larger margin. I think he'll win re-election, but I think he'll increase his margin here in Texas. And I think the Beto thing will be over with.
Okay. Well, he's
and I saw that in El Paso, by the way. We had like 30,000 there for the Trump rally, and maybe 500 for the Beto rally.
Yeah.
So I think his light's dimming.
I was watching his rally. I saw both, and the Trump was pretty wild. I mean, it was big, and then I noticed that. Of course, especially the more liberal media, I noticed they love to suck up close to the stage where it looks like there's a lot of people there. But if you pull back, there wasn't a lot of people there. And I'm not knocking Beto. He's not, he for me watching it, he was kind of flavor of the month. He reminded me of a Robert Kennedy type. He kind of has that Kennedy-esque look. And we're in a different time. Bernie announces and he raises $6 million in a day yesterday, right. and he's going to have a lot of money behind him. But I don't know how long that he's no kid.
Right.
And Trump said yesterday, he thought his better days were behind him.
Probably.
And so I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I've never seen so many people wanting to run for these offices. It's happening in Dallas with 9 people running for the mayor's position, and then you look at how many Democrats are coming out. It's going to be an interesting pool. It's going to be a real interesting pool.
I think you can attribute that to our president. I think he shined a light on on elected office.
that anybody's got a chance.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're involved with the Cowboy Church.
I am.
Yeah, and you're an elder in the church.
I am.
How long have you been involved with Cowboy Church?
We started, my wife and I and another couple and a pastor, the five of us started that in 2004. And we're still going strong. We own some property now and built our own church. We rented and hopped around from the sale barn to different places for a while.
Yeah.
But it's doing very well. We'll run 700 to 800 on a Sunday. We'll run 1,500 to 2,000 on Easter.
Wow.
So we have to have a couple of services to get everybody in, and we're really not robbing anybody's sheep from different flocks. These are people that are for the most part unchurched, or maybe they had a bad experience years ago, and maybe they just don't feel comfortable going to First Church or dressing up. And I'm almost overdressed to go to Cowboy Church right now.
Yeah.
You come in your blue jeans and boots or T-shirt or whatever.
Yeah, Cowboy Church is close to my heart. I have a lot of friends that are in the Cowboy Church, and in fact, one of our international champion auctioneers up in near Welch, Veneta, Oklahoma, Greg Highsmith, who's a big auctioneer with Ritchie Brothers. He's very involved in the church up there, and they've kind of. I'm not going to say he started it because I don't know who started it, but I just know he's embraced it, and their family's very active in the Cowboy Church. There was a group years ago called the Fellowship of you had the Fellowship of Christian Athletes,
right,
and then the Fellowship. Then there became the Fellowship of Cowboys, and which is a kind of an offshoot of the Cowboy Church. Well, we had some friends of ours out in Buffalo, Texas. Not Buffalo, Texas, Buffalo Gap. You know where Buffalo Gap is.
Sure.
So anyway, Charles and Chatty Cass were from out there, and I remember back in the 90s they came to a Texas Auctioneers meeting, and they said, we'd like to start the Fellowship of Texas Auctioneers, and we said, well, and they presented it to us, and they said it's kind of patterned after the Cowboy Church. And so we voted on it, and we said yes, we'll endorse that. And so then a few years later, they came back. And they said we'd like to take it to the National Auctioneers Association, and I was on that board at that time.
That's great.
And so they created the fellowship, the International Fellowship of Christian Auctioneers, and so we still support and endorse that organization. And whatever denomination you happen to be, it's really more about fellowship and having those connections, and we also provide packages and send a lot of things to our troops. That's
Perfect.
Some of the things that we do with that organization. That we work it out of Waco, the Waco area, Hillsboro, and down towards Austin. But it's a neat way to support a lot of different people. And then when somebody needs prayer or they need uplifting, we have a network that we work. A couple more things, and then we're going to wrap this thing up because I know you've got to get to Fort Worth and then go down to the stockyards. You've done some rodeoing and stuff like that. Tell me just a little brief summation of your rodeo work.
Well, something I've just grew up with all my life. I've never really quit. I've had to have my body rebuilt. I've got new knees, hips, and shoulders. So
bionic
I'm good to go. I participated in Fort Worth recently, and the March the 5th, I'll be participating in Houston. I'll be roping down there. So still active. I don't play golf, and I don't have a bass boat. I don't have a Harley Davidson. So
that's your therapy.
That's my therapy. Mm-hmm. Is that saddle seat time, which I really enjoy, and I enjoy. Of course, I raise them, I train them myself, and compete on horses that I've actually raised on the ranch.
And I know your son competed.
My son did really well. He
in Fort Worth
had a chance to win 7 first place, and he won 7 first place. I mean, he was
congratulations.
He did really well.
That was awesome.
Did a good job.
Very good. Well, Sid Miller, you've got a great story. You're quite the Texan.
Well, thank you for having us on.
I'm honored.
One thing I was going to tell you when you're talking about the Cowboy Church, and I forgot.
Yeah.
I think I may be the only state agency that has implemented a chaplaincy program in my department. Mm-hmm. So we have that. We have weekly Bible study during lunch on their own time. No one's required to go.
Yeah.
But I've had a great response from our employees on that. They've really appreciated it.
Well, our fellowship group with the auctioneers, we have chaplains in every state.
That's perfect.
Either state or region.
I figured you might.
Yeah, we do. And it's gone over very, very well. Sid Miller, Texas Agriculture Commissioner, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being here and making time for all the folks that are going to see this basically all over the world. And we hope you'll promote the show. And
Absolutely.
we've certainly enjoyed having you and look forward to watching you the next few years, because I kind of feel like you're one of those guys, and you're going to be hard to keep settled down. And things are going to keep, opportunities are going to keep coming, and you're going to keep stepping up to the plate and doing what needs to happen.
Thank you, Mike. It's good to be with you again. Good to see you again, and let's stay in touch.
Let's do it. All right. Thank you very much. Sid Miller, Texas Agriculture Commissioner here in Texas, just doing it and staying busy and helping the people of Texas and doing the things that need to be done. So we appreciate all of his hard work. And on behalf of everyone here in Dallas at Lincoln Center with the Mike McGavel Jones Show, we bid you adieu from Dallas, Texas. God bless. We'll see you next time.